Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Keep the Line Moving, the podcast designed to talk about leadership, life, and inspiration. I'm your host, Chris Gargano, and for episode 99, we're talking about storytelling, the art of storytelling, with our guest, Jon Schwartz, who's the managing director and head of sports at Prosek Partners. Prosek is the intersection of sports and finance. Previously, Jon was senior vice president communications, marketing, digital, and social media for the Big Ten Conference, as well as SVP, Communications and Public Affairs for the NFL. Jon has had a long and illustrious career, and a lot of it was based on his ability to tell stories. We will talk about that in depth. In fact, in 2012, he was named to PR Week's 40 Under 40 list and was PR News' Corporate Social Responsibility Leader of the Year. He's been an adjunct professor at NYU and also as a college student at the University of Maryland. He will tell us about how he got into the sports industry. You don't want to miss this. So much wisdom from our guest this week on Keep the Line Moving, Jon Schwartz. All right, Jon, it's great to see you. You know, you have a very varied background. You've done a lot of great things in your career. When someone says, "Hey, Jon, what do you do?" How do you answer that?
I tend to say I'm a storyteller, and I help people communicate their thoughts and ideas in a way that helps influence others. And I do it in sports, which is super fun, right? I mean, I think someone told me a long time ago, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I think it's taken a while and different career experiences like you had referenced before for me to figure out where my creative genius is and where I'm at my best. And I think for younger people who are listening or people who are early in their careers or career changers, it's one of those things where like you need to find those environments where you can thrive.
So when you say storytelling, how do you help people? What is it about their story do you like to bring forward that is necessary for them to succeed?
I think it's really helping our clients here at Prosek Partners understand the value of good communications internally with your employees, communications with your consumers, people who are consuming your product or service, and communication with your stakeholders, and do so in a way that has a message, one voice that runs through everything you do. And so what I do is try and help distill that. What are those two or three things that you're trying to tell the marketplace? What do you stand for? What's important to you? What are the things that communicate your values or your ethos? And how does that pull through everything from a direct email to a customer, to a communication with a key partner, to what's happening inside an employee resource group? How are you putting those messages out in a way that's clear, concise, consistent, and compelling, and have those values run through it? I know that we're talking like a 30,000 foot level. The cool part about it is doing that in sports.
How have you successfully told your story throughout the years to get you to the successes that you've achieved? And when did you notice, hey, I'm pretty decent at telling my story, and not in a braggadocious way? Jon, you're a humble gentleman, but you've had a lot of success. How have you been able to articulate that story in alignment with your values, as you said, and your direction in life?
I don't think I'm a complete storyteller yet. I don't think I ever will be, either about myself or about anything I do, right? It's always an iterative process, and you get a little bit better at telling your own story or telling a story about a client, a partner, an associate, your company, an employee every day. You get a little bit better every day, 3% better every day, 1% better every day. And early in my career, I didn't focus much on storytelling. I focused on the grind and getting after it and outworking my competitors and being more prepared than anybody else. And I didn't think about, the role that I had to play, what my story was, or the role that I could play in telling the story of a brand, a team, a sports property, a league, a sanctioning body, a governing body, or even, a sports sponsor that's deeply invested in sports. And so I think it's like one of those things that you need to get muscle memory from, and you need to get that down. I think The greatest storyteller, I think we've gotten better as a society with storytellers. TED Talks didn't exist 15 years ago. And they're so compelling, right? And we've all watched them, right? And they happen inside a finite amount of time. What is it, 12 minutes, 15 minutes? And so I like to hear people tell their stories, and I like to take cues of what they do really well.
Okay, so you mentioned the grind. You mentioned that in your career, which you've prided yourself on, which is working really hard and being there for others and putting in the hours per se. Well, society's different now. Work-life balance is a buzzword, right? And it's somewhat naive to think that we could balance it exactly, but we all try to get it to an area where we could be comfortable and live healthy lives. So my question to you is, now that you look back on your grind, how do you translate that into a story to make sense for today's society? Not saying we're not hard workers today, but the grind is, a little bit in the news in a negative way nowadays.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, especially the ways you posed it. And I think we're all a product of our environment. And for me, I've had some incredible mentors along the way who have given me some amazing guidance, support, teaching, and advice that's really helped me. And some of the best pieces of advice that I've gotten have helped inform how I tell my story, or how I tell somebody else's story, or how I deal with a problem. We're all going to wake up and deal with 5 or 6 different problems every day. But the biggest one that we're all having to deal with, Chris, where you led with your question, is how do you have that balance? When I was at the University of Maryland, I had done 2 internships, one with the Washington Capitals, one with the Pittsburgh Penguins. I was a big hockey guy. I played hockey in club hockey in college for the University of Maryland. And I felt like I was destined to have a career as a public relations person in hockey. Baltimore had an expansion franchise for the AHL. It was the top affiliate of the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. And I annoyed the owner so much that he said, listen, if you leave me alone, well, I'll give you the job, right? So paid $15,000 a year. And I kind of wished the time away, right? I left school. I dropped out of school early to pursue this job, which I thought I'd be in for 50 years. And later in my career, I had somebody, one of my mentors, Jim O'Connell, who was the chief sales officer at NASCAR for many years. He had this phrase about wishing the time, don't wish the time away. And I did that. I made that mistake of putting the grind over not only my education, but my whole college experience. I lost 3/4 of my senior year. And I think it was because I fell in love with a vision of what my career would be and how it would stay that way for decades. And clearly the stops that I've had and the stops that we all have really aren't defined by that first experience. They're defined by a collection of experiences. But as you're going through that grind, Chris, as you said, I love that piece of advice I got from Jim. Just don't wish the time away.
That's noble. And that's really something that we can all identify with, because we always say, this will get easier when, this will get easier when. Well, no, just enjoy that day to day, enjoy that grind in a good way, because you're learning and you're creating and you're getting input and you're testing things. There's so much value to that. Okay. So Jon, you go through your career. You said you did not finish your senior year of college. How do you look back at that?
I think I was somebody who needed to know that I would be in a position to make an impact in the world. And I put a lot of stock into my experience, my internship experiences, and the things that I was doing extracurricularly. And ultimately this job came along and I felt like, wow, this would solve, I was done with being a student, all that stuff. And I started to sort of tie my confidence in my own ability and myself to what was on a business card, the logo and the title and things like that, really early in my career. And I got another really super piece of advice along the way from someone who's a coach and a friend that said, don't outsource your confidence. And I think when you so closely tie your confidence and who you stand for your career, that's when things get a little out of balance. And so it's okay to go after something hard. We want grinders, right? Like I'm a Gen Xer. Like I grew up a grinder, right? Like go to work, work as long as you need to, and don't complain. And hopefully later in life, good things will come. But the mistake I think I made earlier in my career, and even almost up until a few years ago, was really tying your confidence to and your personality and your happiness to the degree to which you're happy in your career. So another great piece of advice I got: really don't outsource your confidence.
I like that. Don't outsource your confidence. So, Jon, you go through your career and you have stops at NASCAR, Bank of America. You have all kinds of clients. You work for the Pittsburgh Penguins, Washington Capitals. I can keep going here if you want. Through those experiences and how you were learning and growing as a professional, what did you evolve into? Did you evolve into somebody who's leading, mentoring, and teaching? Or did you love the fact of being an individual contributor? And where was your view on collaboration? How did you evolve as a pro?
I think it started when I realized the value and the importance of integration. And I think that was born in me because I grew up, like many of us have, in team sports, right? Team sports instill confidence, it's physical fitness, self-esteem, and the ability to rely on others and put trust in others that they will have your back and you'll have theirs. And today's marketing communications people are really good at convening and capturing the will of the group. And I think that's how I evolved in my career. I think that's how the discipline has evolved over the years. We have it at Prosek, we have a phrase, it's called finder, minder, binder, grinder. Can you find new business? Can you mind the existing business? You do a good job with your clients, running the accounts and giving good customer service. Are you a binder? Can you bring people together underneath you and across the firm and bring people together around a unifying goal? And grinder is just what it is. It's a grinder. And so I think there are 5 tools in PR, right? You need to be able to write. You need to be able to handle crisis. You need to be able to manage up and across and integrate. You need to be able to write a strategic plan and that brings together multiple disciplines. And you need to be really good with media relationships and media relations. And so we think about all the things that you need to put together to be successful in this field or in sports. I think it's, if you could give me like 100 people those 5 things, and we'll be able to conquer the world.
You walk in every day, and I've asked other people on this podcast the same question. You're focused on what? I know that you just said earlier in our conversation that people wake up, they have 5 different elements or things they have to take care of in that day. But I want to know your primary. When you wake up in the morning, you head to the office, or you're working from home, or you're out visiting a client, your primary focus is what as the managing director and head of sports?
So our practice is all about the intersection of where sports meets finance. So really for me, I'm focused on growing our sports business practice and helping our existing clients understand the value of tapping into our practice and leveraging our expertise. We've got a lot of brands that are in financial services. Many of those brands, as you'd imagine, are invested in sports as sponsors. So how can we help them extract the maximum value they can out of their investment in the intellectual property that they purchased from a team, a league, a governing body, a sanctioning body, right? Because it's one thing to do a sponsorship deal, and slap your logo on something. It's another to have a fully thought out, integrated sponsorship strategy that includes marketing communications. That's activation. So one good example is we work with Citi. We help them tell stories about their investments in sports. And we have a couple other clients we help do the same. So really waking up to serve our existing clients, find new partners that need some help in this area. And just for me, as somebody who's new here, just learn the culture and just work really hard on being a good teammate. You have to be really intentional in how you roll, when you're focused on also being a good teammate while doing the work. And I think that's part of what a lot of people miss when they're early in their career. Like, you need to put some time and energy into relationships. My brother has been working in sports and entertainment for well over 20 years. And he has a saying that I picked up also. He says, if somebody has a door, go knock on it. You know, got to build those relationships while you're there. So if you're doing an internship or you're in your first year of your job or you have a summer gig, you got to use that to make a connection. You got to walk away from that experience with a new relationship, a new lead, something that'll help you with your next step. So don't be idle. So like, I try every day not to be idle. I try to do all those things at once. And sometimes, like anybody listens to this, I'm more successful some days than others.
Okay, Jon, so let's drill down on that, because you do teach at NYU, as do I. We love it there. You and I have talked about that. But you mentioned that some people coming up, per se, don't understand the concept of why that's valuable. For some reason, it's not going on as much. And let's not fault anybody. Let's not blame anybody. But let's dissect this to give valuable advice, right? Because we grew up with that notion. Your brother's great advice. Knock on the door. If they have a door, go knock, right? Or if it's in the virtual world, send them a message or set up a Zoom or something like this, right? But that's not necessarily in the ethos and the thought patterns and emotional connections of folks coming up now. Why do you think that is?
We are all tethered to our devices. Whether you're on instant message or Teams or text message or whatever, there's so many ways to reach people, and you have to plug into so many different things that it's so easy to miss something. And so, like we have to be in a couple days a week here at Prosek. I work in our New York office. We're in Midtown. We have a beautiful brand new office overlooking Madison Square Park. I like to be in as much as I can because I don't want to miss another message, which is an opportunity to bump into somebody in the cafe, a nuance in someone's body language, the opportunity to sort of have a hallway conversation. We're missing that, Chris, right? In today's remote work world, we have to check every other information source, whatever it's coming in, every piece of technology, social media, instant message, text, whatever, except reading each other and being present. And I'm a big believer in being present. Doesn't mean that the whole team needs to be in more than 2 days a week. It just means that there's a value in being in person. And so I think don't miss the opportunity to sort of pick your head up and take a lap around the office. There's so much value in that. Everywhere I've been, I've always made it a point to make part of my day. Can I go out into the workplace and interact with somebody, right, in person? And I think those interactions are really meaningful. And we're missing it, right? For those people who are working 100% remote, we're missing that component. And that part's sad. And also the other thing too is, Chris, I think it's really important. We have more generations working in the workplace now than ever before. It's fascinating, right? You have baby boomers working with Gen Zs. What's that dynamic? How much can get lost over Teams or instant message or text message or email, right? And so don't miss those opportunities. If your workplace is throwing a social activity, if there's an employee resource group that you can be part of, that there's an in-person component, take advantage. Do that. FaceTime is still extremely important.
So for fear of sounding like an old dude, which I am, I'm going to just give it a logical, a theoretical, a logical explanation to this. So we, in our age group, Jon, I'm older than you, but we have the advantage of living a life without the internet, without the smartphones, without the connectivity that exists today. Do I sound old? I'm very self-aware, 1,000%. It's a test, right? It's a beta, right? We're look at this. So we have that advantage to then now having that stuff. So I'm on my phone too. It's right here next to me. It's very rarely not that far from me, which would be the same as a 12-year-old, a 22-year-old, a 32-year-old, and me. So I understand both. Here's what I would take away. It's more fun to connect to people face to face. To the points that you're making, this is my personal opinion. So someone would say, okay, hey, it's just easier to DM somebody, to text them, to get on chat, or pardon me, Slack, or whatever the heck their means of and I do all that too. Let's be real. It's more fun to be with people, in my opinion, for my personality. So I'm sure my point is, there are other people out there that probably, if they gave it a chance or like tested their comfort zone a little bit, it might be more fun and rewarding for them as well. And then eventually advantageous to their careers. Fair point?
Very fair point. And I think, look, I know you talk to your students a lot. You just don't spend time teaching from the syllabus, right? You get in there and you have robust discussions and in-class activities, and you have some one-on-ones. And I have the opportunity to talk about three things. One is everything communicates. Your tone over text or email or Slack or Teams or whatever, how you sign off on an email, your posture. If I was sitting back during this interview, you would think that I was kind of blowing it off. I didn't care, or what I'm wearing, or my Zoom background, or anything. Showing up on time, showing up to certain things, being attentive, like how you speak, how prepared you are, what your resume looks like, what your social media profile looks like, the things you say online. Everything you do when you show up, are you on time, communicates. The other thing that's really important to keep in mind in today's workplace is, so everything communicates, that's one. Number two, everything is important, right? You never know if you're being tasked or tested. And so if you are in a new situation at work, or there's a change in leadership or something, pay attention to those small details and think about each activity as one of the more important things you're going to be doing each week. Because everything is important. You never know, like I said, you never know if you're being tasked and tested. And the last thing I'll say, and I think this is really important for anybody, any stage in their career, is everything is connected, right? Chris, you and I got connected through a mutual acquaintance of ours, Fred Mangione, who is one of the most influential sports leaders of our generation, in my opinion. And he's one of the more undercovered people, because he is a great connector of people. He understands the value of relationships and networking. And so do you, Chris. And I think I do too. And I know a lot of people who put a premium on those relationships, because the reality is that your next job, your next career opportunity is not going to come from, for me, it was a want ad in the New York Times. It's certainly not going to come from a job site or applying online. It's going to come from your network. It could come from LinkedIn. It could come from someone a call you had, an impression you made, right? So everything is going to. I got hooked up with this opportunity because one of the partners, Karen Nivich Davis, I went to high school with, and we hadn't connected in well over 25 years. But we had a great positive interaction back then, and we've had several since, right? And so, like, one job leads to another, one opportunity leads to another. So the three big things: everything communicates. I talk to my students, everything communicates, everything is important, and everything is connected.
That's awesome, Jon. And I love that you brought up Fred Mangione, who is a great connector, and it lives for that and is selfless. I could go on and on about Fred, who's also been obviously on this podcast. Okay, one more, and we will go to all-star moments. Tell me about your NYU Club. I've alluded to it many times. What do you like to get accomplished?
Well, I don't view a class, a session in class successful unless I learn something. I know that sounds completely strange because I'm there to teach, but ultimately I get a massive amount of information from the students when I talk about topics and I see their reaction, or I ask a question and I understand. Here's a really good example. A few years ago, I was teaching. I was at NASCAR. We were right before we were about to do our 10-year media rights deals for TV. We ended up doing them with a 10-year deal with Fox and 10-year deal with NBC. This was back in, I think it's 2013, 2014. I was teaching at the time. And I was just curious. I'm like, how are you guys? How are you consuming sports? Like, how are you watching your favorite? One kid raised his hand in the back. Says, "Well, I go on Reddit and I search for the stream and I find a link and I watch it for free." And it was like, whoa! Like, what are we? What? I need to take this back to NASCAR to figure out, are we thinking about this, right? Like in the context of a broader media agreement, how young people are consuming sports. And of course we were thinking about it, and they're already on their next deal now. But the point is like, I learn something every time I set foot in the classroom. That's what I'm hoping to accomplish. If I could do that and inspire one person to do something positive in their life or in their career or in their schoolwork, that's great.
That's really interesting, in getting the most out of those classrooms and the students, and they teaching you teaching them, and having it a full conversation and real world application. I love it, Jon. All right, are you ready for all-star moments?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Number one, how do you deal with adversity?
I rely on my instincts and my grit and my integrity, and the people I know who will support me unconditionally. And in those difficult moments, I think back to ways in which I've handled other difficult moments, and I use that to sort of carry me forward and not dwell.
What gives you fuel?
Mentoring people, extracting the best out of them, and seeing them overcome their own challenges.
What does never give up mean to you?
Never give up is not asking anyone to do something that you wouldn't do yourself. I think that you can get other people inspired to share your vision of never giving up.
Last one. Everyone's career is not a straight line. What does that mean to you?
It means that I had visions of being a PR director of a minor league hockey team in Baltimore, Maryland for 50 years. So you're right. It's not a straight line, but you have to open up the aperture in your own mind to identify opportunities when you see them, and know that when you get tapped on the shoulder, it's worth a conversation. Don't write anything off until you've really gotten a chance to really understand the whole story and the real opportunity, what the upside might be for you and your chance to actually have a positive impact on society.
Nicely said. Nice, Jon. Thank you very much. This has been wonderful.
Thank you for having me on, Chris. I love the show.
And we thank Jon very much for being on the show. I have 3 takeaways. 2 of them are advice Jon was given. The last one, Jon giving advice. Number 1, Jon was told, don't wish your time away. Embrace the grind, the failures, the successes, the hard work that goes into your journey. You can appreciate it by not wishing your time away. Be in the present. Number 2, he was also told, don't outsource your confidence. Have it generated from within. I know, a lot easier said than done. We talked about that. But don't make the validation of others be part of your internal confidence. And number 3, advice Jon was giving folks trying to get into the sports world, very consistent with other conversations that we've had on the podcast in the past, which is own your LinkedIn profile, your resume, your ability to tell your story. Everything matters. How you walk into the interview, if it's virtual, how you turn on the Zoom, your eye contact, listening, all of it matters. And in the spirit of wanting everyone to be successful, Jon shared some very great wisdom and valuable advice. I thought he was wonderful. Hope you agreed that this was a wonderful conversation. Thank you, everybody, for being part of it. We will see you next week on Keep the Line Moving. Follow, subscribe, recommend the podcast. We appreciate it. You know that. Next week is our 100th episode. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time on Keep the Line Moving. Every week, you hear guests on this podcast talk about some of their biggest leadership challenges. As a leader, you want to make an impact on those you lead and reach your organization's goals, while also optimizing your time management. Wherever you are in your leadership journey, we could all use some help. This is what we focus on with our group and individual coaching services. To book a call or get more information, email me directly at chrisg@garganoleadership.com or visit our website at garganoleadership.com. For our podcast and video producer, Jack Radutsky, and our marketing coordinator, Savin Narwal. Have a great week, everybody.